Pull up your last grocery receipt. Look at the total. It's higher than it was 2 months ago. Your rent went up too. Your mortgage rate just climbed. And you're about to find out that all three happened because of the same 21 miles of ocean. That strip of water is also threatening your medicine supply. It's about to make everything made of plastic more expensive. And most people have never heard of it. The Strait of Hormuz. Here's a number: 20 million. That's how many barrels of oil pass through the Strait of Hormuz every single day. 20 million barrels. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, the EIA, that's roughly 20% of every drop of petroleum the world consumes. 1 barrel in 5. The International Energy Agency puts the trade number even higher. In 2025, nearly 15 million barrels per day of crude oil alone moved through the strait, 34% of all crude oil traded on the planet by sea. More than a third. And it's not just oil. About 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas, LNG, travels the same route. Most of that comes from Qatar. Think about what that means. 1/5 of the world's oil, 1/5 of its gas, flowing through a gap in the ocean that's narrower than the distance most people drive to work. 2 shipping lanes, 2 miles each, separated by a 2-mile buffer. That's it, that's the whole passage. Now here's the part that makes it dangerous. There is almost no way around it. Saudi Arabia and the UAE have pipelines that can bypass the strait. Combined, those pipelines can handle about 3.5 to 5.5 million barrels a day. That sounds like a lot, until you remember that 20 million barrels are flowing through the strait every day. The pipelines cover at best a quarter. Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, and Iran. They have no pipeline alternatives, zero. That leaves roughly 14 million barrels per day, every single day, physically dependent on one 21-mile-wide passage. Now you might be thinking that's a problem for oil traders, for shipping companies, for governments. It's not. It's a problem for you. And you've already started paying for it. Every product on your grocery shelf arrived by truck, train, or cargo ship. All three run on diesel. When the Strait of Hormuz closed, diesel prices in the United States jumped 23% to $4.65 a gallon. That's not petrol, that's diesel. The fuel that moves every avocado, every carton of milk, every bag of rice from a warehouse to the store where you buy it. And it doesn't stop at the truck. Energy is baked into every stage of the food supply chain. Growing it, harvesting it, processing it, packaging it, refrigerating it, shipping it, stacking it on the shelf. Every single step burns fuel. A professor of food economics at Michigan State University put it simply: food gets to the grocery store on diesel, whether it's on a truck or on a boat. Here's the number that puts this in your pocket. The average American household spends about $50 a week filling up their tank. That's $2,500 a year. A jump of 80 cents a gallon translates to roughly $400 a year in extra fuel costs alone, even before food prices catch up. And they will catch up. According to the USDA, food prices in 2026 are now predicted to rise 3.6%. That's faster than the 20-year average. Beef is up over 14% from a year ago, sugar and sweets up 9%, non-alcoholic beverages up 5.5%. But here's the thing most people miss. The fuel cost, the diesel, the shipping, that's just the first wave. The second wave is worse, and it's invisible. About a third of all fertilizer traded by sea passes through the Strait of Hormuz. Read that again: 1/3 of global seaborne fertilizer trade, through the same 21 miles that carry the oil. The Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, Bahrain, and Iran are some of the world's largest producers of nitrogen fertilizer. Nitrogen fertilizer is made from natural gas, and the Gulf sits on some of the biggest gas reserves on Earth. The most important nitrogen fertilizer is called urea. It's the compound that helps corn, wheat, and rapeseed actually grow. And according to analysts at StoneX, closing the Strait of Hormuz bottled up almost 50% of the world's urea exports. 50%, half the world's supply, gone overnight. And the timing is the cruelest part. The strait closed at the end of February, just as farmers across the entire Northern Hemisphere were preparing to plant. Spring is when you spread nitrogen, it's when crops need it most. Miss that window and you don't get a do-over, you get a smaller harvest. As one brokerage director put it, if you'd sat them down and said, think of the nightmare scenario for fertilizer, what would it be? it would be this exact event during this exact time of year. The Fertiliser Institute estimated that American farmers alone would be short 2 million tons of urea this spring. Urea prices at the New Orleans import hub surged 32% in a single week, from $5.16 to $6.83 per metric ton. But urea isn't even the scariest part. About half of all global sulfur shipments also pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Sulfur is a byproduct of oil and gas processing, and it's a critical ingredient in phosphate fertilizer. No sulfur, no phosphate fertilizer. As the chief economist at the American Farm Bureau Federation put it, it's a twofer. So you've lost half your urea and half your sulfur through the same chokepoint. Two different fertilizers, same bottleneck. And here's what that means for you, not for farmers, for you. If crops don't get fertilized in spring, you don't just get more expensive food later, you get less food, lower yields, smaller harvests. That shortage doesn't resolve in weeks. It plays out across an entire growing season and into the next year. The countries that get hit hardest aren't rich ones with domestic production. They're import-dependent nations across Africa and South Asia who are already on the edge. The UN World Food Programme warned of record levels of hunger. One body of water, and it's deciding whether families on the other side of the world can afford to eat. But it still gets worse, because we haven't talked about the thing that's in almost everything you own. Pick up any object near you right now, your phone, your water bottle, your pen, the packaging your last delivery came in. There's a good chance it's made from petrochemicals, chemicals derived from oil and gas. Plastics, synthetic fabrics, packaging, detergents, car parts, electronics, medical devices, all of it. And when the Strait of Hormuz closed, it didn't just block oil. It blocked almost 20% of global petrochemical capacity. The Middle East supplies about 30% of global seaborne exports of liquefied petroleum gas, a key feedstock for making plastics. Around 80% of Asia's seaborne naphtha imports come from the Middle East. Naphtha is the base ingredient for most plastics production. Some plastics prices had already risen 15% within weeks. And here's the number that makes this personal. The average American uses 255 kilograms of new plastics every year. The global average, 60. Americans consume 4 times more plastic per person than the rest of the world. That means every price increase in petrochemicals hits you harder than almost anyone else on Earth. Your takeaway containers, your grocery packaging, your shampoo bottle, your car dashboard, your children's toys, your phone case. You don't buy petrochemicals, but you buy everything that's made from them. Now, this next part might surprise you. Medicine. Pharmaceutical manufacturers rely on petrochemical derivatives, methanol, ethylene, for the ingredients in painkillers, antibiotics, and vaccines. India produces a fifth of the world's generic drugs. Those drugs normally travel to global markets through Dubai and Doha airports. Both were disrupted by the conflict. The UK was warned it could be weeks away from medicine shortages. Not obscure specialist drugs, painkillers, blood pressure medication, cancer treatment. And then there's helium. Qatar produces nearly a third of the world's helium supply. You might think that's a party balloon problem, it's not. Every MRI scanner requires roughly 1,500 to 2,000 liters of liquid helium to keep its superconducting magnets cold enough to work. Without a stable supply, the machines stop functioning. Helium is also essential for semiconductor manufacturing, the chips inside your phone, your laptop, your car. No helium, no chips. So stop and think about where we are now. We started at the grocery receipt. Now we're at MRI machines and semiconductor fabs from one strait. But it doesn't stop at the things you buy. There's a chain that connects oil prices to the interest rate on your mortgage. Most people don't know it exists. It works like this. Oil prices spike, everything gets more expensive to move and make. Inflation rises. Investors see inflation coming, so they demand more return on long-term bonds to protect their money. Bond yields climb. And mortgage rates follow bond yields, they almost always do. This chain played out in real time. Before the strikes, the average 30-year fixed mortgage rate in the United States was 5.9%. Within weeks, it climbed to 6.35%. Half a percentage point, that doesn't sound like much. But do the maths. On a $400,000 loan over 30 years, that half point is tens of thousands of dollars in extra interest over the life of the mortgage. For some buyers, it's the difference between qualifying for the loan and being told no. The chief economist at the National Association of Realtors said it directly: high oil prices are not good for mortgage rates. The Federal Reserve held its benchmark interest rate steady in March, no cuts. Not while energy costs were this volatile. 97% of interest rate traders expected no action in April either. The OECD raised its inflation forecast for G20 countries to 4% for 2026, 1.2 percentage points higher than their previous forecast. And they warned if disruptions persist, outcomes could be significantly worse. So a strait you've never visited just made your rent more expensive, pushed back your home purchase, and might have cost you a pay rise, because companies that pay more for energy and raw materials have less money left for wages. But there's one more place this hits you, and you probably check it once a year if that. Your pension, your superannuation, your retirement fund. Most people's retirement savings are invested in diversified portfolios, equities, bonds, alternatives, spread across markets and sectors around the world. When a Strait of Hormuz closure hits, it sends shockwaves through all of them, simultaneously. Here's the thing people get wrong about diversification. You think because your money is spread across different sectors, you're protected. But oil isn't a sector, it's an input to every sector. When oil spikes, manufacturing costs more, retail costs more, tech costs more, transport costs more. Your diversified portfolio is diversified across 100 different industries that all depend on the same commodity. It's not that your retirement fund is invested in oil companies. It's that your retirement fund is invested in everything that uses oil, which is everything. And the longer-term danger has a name: stagflation. That's when inflation rises and economic growth stalls at the same time. It's the worst-case scenario for central banks, because the tool that fixes inflation, raising rates, also kills growth. There's no clean answer. Economists are already pointing to the 1973 oil crisis, the 1978 crisis, and 2008 as evidence that every significant spike in oil prices has been followed in some form by a global recession. And here's the number that should stay with you. The CEO of Dow, one of the world's largest chemical companies, warned that even if the strait reopened tomorrow, it would take 250 to 275 days to unwind the damage. 9 months. 9 months of elevated costs, disrupted supply chains, delayed production, and reduced output, even after the ships start moving again. The die, he said, is already cast for the rest of the year. 21 miles, 2 shipping lanes, a 2-mile buffer, a passage narrower than most people's daily commute. And through it flows 1/5 of the world's oil, 1/5 of its gas, 1/3 of its fertilizer, half its sulfur, 1/3 of its helium, 1/5 of its petrochemical capacity. When it closed, it didn't just raise the price of petrol, it raised the price of bread. It raised your mortgage rate. It threatened your medicine supply. It shook the value of your retirement savings. It put millions of people in developing countries closer to hunger. This is the hidden architecture of daily life. The narrow straits, the fragile chokepoints, the invisible bargains that keep everything running until they don't. And the strangest part, most people still think this was about oil.